Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this special live stream that we're hosting to talk about the rent and housing crisis happening in Florida. It shouldn't be news for a lot of people, but there's just a real wave of raising rents and higher costs of living across the entire state. So we're joined here today with other advocate organizations and folks that work in housing justice across the state to talk a little bit more about what is happening and what we can do about the housing crisis we have in Florida. So I'll go ahead and start with our guest here from Florida Rising, Dialencia. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everybody. My name is Delensa Cadet. I'm the community organizer for Orange County with Florida Rising.
Awesome. We're really excited to have you in on this conversation. Next, of course, we have Jack here with as a part of For Our Future and the St. Pete Tenants Org. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Jack Wallace just got hired at For Our Future, so that's very fun. But I've been doing work with the tenants unions here in Tampa and St. Petersburg for since the beginning of 2021, basically. So yeah, seen a lot of stuff, and yeah, definitely I'm excited to talk about it.
And of course, last but not least, we're here with Juan, who's in South Florida and can tell us a little more about what's going on in the South.
Hello, everybody. My name is Juan Moore. I am the South Florida Regional Director for Our Future Florida. So that's Miami-Dade County, Broward County, and Palm Beach County. I am absolutely excited to talk about the rent being so darn high across Florida. And I think we have some specialists here to talk with us. So, hey, let's talk.
Super. Well, yeah, we're here. You can see here, Florida Rising, For Our Future, and the St. Pete's Tenant Union. I'll go ahead and take us into some numbers here that we have, which tells us a little bit more about what's going on. And I guess we can start with the Tampa area and kind of work around. It's different in different spots, but we can definitely see here that it's over 25% increase. How have things looked over in the Tampa area?
Yeah, not great. There's been lots of news stories about Tampa and the Tampa metro area, including Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, right? And then usually includes Polk County and probably Manatee and Sarasota as well. So, a big part of our state, a lot of people who live there. And rents, basically increasing by a third over the course of, probably less than 2 years, right? It's unsustainable for folks, right? And I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit more, but when wages are basically stagnant, especially here in Florida, and the rents are going up by 30%, it's like, what do you do? What are you sacrificing in order to get this to work so you're not homeless? But yeah, so it's been rough. It's definitely been rough recently for people in Tampa, rent wise, for sure.
And I know in Orlando, the average cost is going up almost 20%. And just yesterday, Orange County, the Orange County, the county commissions were considering some rent control options. And I know, Dialencia, you got to join in on that. What's the perspective that you've gotten to see in working with housing justice in Orange County?
Well, so not just Orlando, but in all Orange County, period, with Seminole and Osceola, just in that general area, rents going up almost every year by $300 to $500. So it's rents basically doubling every 2 years, and wages are not going up. There's not a lot of jobs that are going up, so people are having to go without food or without electricity or without water just so they can maintain their housing. And yesterday, Commissioner Emily Bonilla, she proposed a rent control measure. She did the research, brought over the ordinance, and yes, she's proposing that rent only be increased by 5%, which is something that I think that the economy and people can actually keep up with. But doubling the rent every 2 years, there's no possible way for anybody to keep up with that.
Absolutely. And I know this says 38.6% on average in Miami, David. But there's parts of Miami-Dade where we're seeing 50% of rent increase. And not only that, I mean, we're still in the midst of a pandemic, and so a lot of people were coming out of situations where they were already behind, being able to afford where they were, and then with now assistance and programs within Florida that are helping families and families that are ready to get back on their feet. It just seems impossible what they have set in front of them. We need our leaders to recognize this is not just an issue; it's a crisis.
Yeah, and here's some more numbers around the rental vacancy rate, both in Tampa, Orlando, and Miami. And I know Jack, you kind of got to look into this a little more. What does this really mean when we're looking at rental vacancy rates?
Yeah, so this number, right, is looking at the annual vacancy rates around Florida, right? So basically, what this means is like what percentage of the rental units that are available are empty at any given time throughout the year, right? So this is just sort of on average how many, like what percentage of the rental units are available, right, are basically empty. So this is a little bit outdated, right? It's 2022, but 3 years or so, that's still pretty relevant, I would say. Tampa is about 8%, Orlando 11, 12, and then Miami around 6 or something like that. So basically, why I wanted to talk about this is, right, I think it's a really good sort of way to sort of talk back to some of the detractors who are saying like oh, like, well, like this is not an emergency, right? Like this is not a problem, right? Well, I would say, like there are rentals that are available, right? What is going on here, right? Like why aren't people getting into these places? And it's because landlords are price gouging people, right? They're charging, these rents are way too high, right? It's not an issue of whether there's enough housing for people. It's really all about that like the people are getting charged too much, right? It's frankly crazy, especially in Orlando. Close to 12% of all rentals, these are hundreds of thousands of rental units that are available across the state that aren't being rented out to people for what reason. And unfortunately, that reason is increasing your profit margins basically. And like one of the things that we at least with the tenants union we talk about is that like we believe everybody deserves a home, right? Everyone deserves a place to have over their head. I don't I know on this panel, right, that's probably not a controversial statement, but for unfortunately for some folks it is. And so I think this is a good way to sort of push back on some of those sort of detractors and say like, well, no, here, like like here's some information, right? Here's some data, like it's not we're just declaring it, we can see it on the ground, right? We have the data, we can see what's going on.
Yeah, and to add to what Jack is saying about people not being able to get into it because of the rent, and then you also have to make 3 times the rent to get into the place, because you might be able to pay for the rent, but if you can't show that you can pay 3 times the rent, then you're out of luck. And then we also have to consider administration fees, application fees. Those most of the time are non-refundables. You're not getting that back. So you're applying for, let's say, 5, 6, 10 apartments. You just spent $600. That could have went to your rent. So that also adds to the issue. And then with the rental vacancy rate being so high, it's because evictions. The eviction rate in Orlando is extremely high. And there is only a 5-day, you only get a 5-day notice. So you only have 5 days to respond. Most people don't have the means, if they're getting evicted, they don't have the means to put money into the registry, into the court to have their case heard. They don't have the means to get a lawyer. We have community legal aid, but they don't have the means with this the high capacity that we have of evictions. They don't have the means to help everyone.
Yeah, and I did just want to speak a little bit more about you mentioned evictions, right? In sort of the Tampa Bay area, I know this is the part I know the best, of course. About 26,000 eviction filings basically over the course of since like April of 2020 when the pandemic started. So, that's that's all the legal filed evictions, right? That have happened, right? 26,000 times, right, over the past like 2 years, just about. So that's a lot of people. That's a lot of families. That's a lot of homes. That's a lot of places. That's a lot of elderly people. That's a lot of disabled people, right? It's really tough right now. And the like you said, like here in Pinellas County, if you're on a month-to-month lease like I am, the landlord can give you 21 days before you technically, they want you to be out, right? And that's just not enough time for folks. And like you said, like the cost of moving like is really expensive. The cost for applications, the cost for that first month security deposit, right? It's a crisis. There's just I think this is sort of what we're sort of accumulating towards, but this is a crisis, like clearly, and that's just something we can see across the state of Florida.
Yeah, I was going to say that, like here in Miami, you it's not just the security deposit, right? It's first, last. It's first, security, and last, and they all equal the same amount. So a 2-bedroom averages at about 13 to 1,500 here, and so just imagine trying to move in, paying that 3 times over. It's crazy. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and also month-to-month rental leases are just, that they're built around favoring landlords and landlord companies, where I presumably like the rent could increase effectively 3 or 4 times in a given year on month-to-month leases, where you basically revisit the lease on a monthly basis, and that's incredible and almost certainly a contributing factor to the lack of stability. But I'll move us along just to the kind of question prompt that can really, of course, spark the discussion that with rents going up, there are, rent is going up, and there's also hundreds of thousands of rental units available. That's sort of, I guess it seems like conflicting data, but when you have rent going up and availability at the same time, what does that really tell us about what the housing market is like in Florida and what it means for tenants?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, right? This is about improving. Over the course of the pandemic, right? There was some protections for tenants, right? There was the CDC eviction moratorium, right? That lasted roughly, less than a year, right? And Florida also had its own sort of moratorium, right? So throughout that period, there was still evictions going on, of course, right? But there was some sorts of tenant protections like we don't usually see in the state of Florida, especially, and across the nation, more generally. But there was some protections for renters, right? There was money going out, right? And sort of more rental assistance, that sort of thing. There was money coming from the federal government in the form of like stimulus checks, stuff like there was just more assistance to be had, right? And I think unfortunately, as we're sort of waning down off of those things over the past 6 months or so, the ERA money is starting to run out, right? And so, this is a really crucial time, frankly, just from what I'm seeing, talking to tenants, right? The emergency rental assistance money isn't going to last forever, right? So it's clear that the rents are still continuing to go up, right? But sort of the assistance that folks maybe had before are sort of expiring at this point. So there's a big need for it, right? There's a big need for organizing around this topic, right? And I know we're probably going to speak about that a little bit more later, but yeah, like this is the time to stand with your neighbors, right? This is the time to stand with the people that you live with, and the people in your city, to say, like, we're not going to take this anymore.
Yeah, and in the state of Florida, there are no statutes that limit how high rent can go. So the rent can be raised to $10,000 if they wanted to, and that's just not feasible When also the eviction rates are going up almost every day. Hundreds of evictions are being filed every day with no legal support, with no assistance towards, there is rental assistance, but there's no legal assistance or when it comes to evictions. So I believe that's why the units are available, but people aren't able to get into the units.
Yeah, and I think one of the things is that these, for I guess for lack of a better term, like these housing unit providers are on the one hand like so big that they're able to really kind of look at it in just a sort of dispassionate way when this is people's homes, people's livelihoods, and they don't really have many other options at the end of the day. One of the testimonies yesterday that was the most impactful to me was this woman talking about, she works on what is effectively a fixed income at Disney. It's not going up, and her rent has gone up $500, and it's an absolutely challenging decision. Do you move? But then you have kids. You're having to take into account the school district they'll be in, the safety of the neighborhood that they'll be in. There's just a lot to consider, and it isn't simply a practical thing of if you don't like your rent, go somewhere where it's lower. There's just a lot that it just doesn't take into account when you have rental unit owners basically just saying, oh, this is a market correction and now it's going up 30% because that's what we think the fair valuation of it is, and it's absolutely a devastating position to take when realistically you're going to impact hundreds of people across an area. So that's one of the challenges that I think of when looking at this and hearing the testimony from impacted people.
Also, we got to look at what affordable housing is in Florida, right? And so a lot of times, especially here in Miami, affordable housing tends to be on or in lower income communities, which is overcrowded, and which we see a lot of economic justice issues happening. And so, where do these people go? And again, under Florida, where we're talking about Florida, a lot of these programs are being shut down. And so what does that look like? Where do these people go into these facilities, such as the Hack, which is a homeless shelter here in Miami-Dade, or do they go to the street? What is the answer that our leadership is giving us for people who are going to, or who are in these circumstances? This isn't going to be, it is already. So,
I think that really segues perfectly into the question we have here, which is really our call to action. What are some ways? I think we spent a good bit of time talking about the ways in which this is a problem, where we see it and how we're seeing it. And so I think that the biggest question now is what can people do?
I think Jack started to hit it right on the bat. Start talking to your neighbors. If you're having an issue, you live in a neighborhood, it's most likely not you. I can promise you, it's not just you. This is a housing crisis that is going throughout the whole entire state of Florida. Reach out to your commissioners, reach out to your elected officials, let them know what's going on, be specific about your issues, let them know how many people that this is impacting. And it's not going to get any better if we're not making any change.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, just with having a background in, working in the tenants unions, right? We've seen wins like here in Tampa and in St. Pete, right? Just in, having folks, say your apartment complex is 15 units, you get a rental increase. What do you do about it, right? I would say you probably should talk to your neighbors because they're probably getting the same rental increase, right? Like you said, this is a systemic problem. It's not a failing of any one individual. It's a systemic problem that's happening. Talking to your neighbors, right? You're gonna have to go and say like, hey, did you just receive this too, right? And then there's a couple of things you can do once you get there, right? But once you're sort of sign everybody on, usually how it goes is maybe even trying to get everybody to sign like some sort of letter, right? Some sort of demand letter, or just some sort of like statement of intent of saying like, hey, like we're not going to take this, and we want to be considered. We want our our economic reality to be considered. And then you start negotiating with your landlord, right? Directly with your landlord. Sending emails, like having public meetings with your neighbors, right? Even bringing on the press, right? We had a story of a win in a place called Holly Court, Tampa. It's an apartment complex. It's pretty small. There was probably about 14 units or so. And one of the folks there reached out to the Tampa Tenants Union, right? And the Tampa Tenants Union were able to sort of give them like a structure, right, in order to organize around. And then they contacted all their neighbors. They got them out to 2 different protests, right? With a couple different demands. The media showed up, right? It had good media attention. And now instead of being evicted, right, and sort of having to leave their homes, the rental, the landlords have basically said like, okay, we're going to put you up in a hotel while these essential repairs are being made. And we're going to, bring you back at the same rate as it was before, right? And we're still going to have to make sure that happens, right? We're going to have to make sure we keep them accountable because they can change their mind, the landlords. But that's a huge win, right? From tenants who were basically going to be, kicked out, and then do the landlord special, right, on your apartment, and then increase the rates by 30%, right? That's a huge win, and that sort of shows the power of organizing with your neighbors. And then of course, I'm part of the tenants unions force, so I'm going to plug the tenants unions, of course, because I think we do a lot of good work. But I know both in Tampa and St. Pete, as well as Orlando and Miami, there's tenant unions that are fighting as well to be able to support people through these times, because it's never guaranteed, right? But all we can do is struggle, right? All we can do is sort of organize to try to win. And so, yeah, that's sort of, I guess, one of my stories of, people fighting back and winning. But I'm sure, somebody would like to speak on the organizing for the federal legislation as well.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we do it all the time here at For Our Future, and that's why I was going to jump in behind Alyncia and Jack there. But you could definitely join us at For Our Future. We've been doing calls, patch throughs to Senator Marco Rubio's voice message system, letting him know that the rent is too damn high, and letting voters say that over the voice message. And even though it's not an immediate impact, it lets them know that we are not going to rest until they understand that this is a crisis and they need to put us before them. And there's other things that we'll be doing. David will be creating a petition that will be floating around. That will be also gathering together to give and have a press event to deliver these petitions to the senators and to Governor DeSantis. This is a crisis. Like I said, this is a problem, and organizing definitely starts with the community, with you, and with the neighbors getting together and saying that it's affecting us all, right? And we're not going to settle for living in the streets, right? Because that's the only option that's foreseeable with the way that we're going. And so you could definitely come organize with us here at For Our Future. Look us up at forourfuturefund.org. And then you can go to our Facebook page as well for the Facebook. As David, one more time, I always mess the Facebook up, get them switched up.
We have our Organizing to Victory pages that are really active and great hubs, not just for us, but for a lot of our partner orgs as well.
Yeah, and so just back off what Juan was saying, I think it's just starting with remembering that you are in power. You're the ones who put these people in the positions that they are. You have the power to make change, and there's more power in more numbers. That's why organizing and talking to your neighbors is so important. And you can do that also with For Our Future and with Florida Rising. You can find us at flrising.org. We can find us on Facebook, Florida Rising. And yeah, there are places, there are organizations out there who have the means and who are ready to help fight this fight.
Yeah, and I wanted to share here again. Yeah, we have all the sites that you can keep up with for the St. Petersburg Tenants Union for our future and Florida Rising, and we'll want to let people know about ways that they can stay involved and things that are coming up here very soon. I know next week we will be back to housing justice calls on our Tuesday, Wednesday phone banks, and then of course wanted to mention that staying active and all the hearings that we have, especially if you're in Orange County, these a rental control measure is being considered, and making your voice heard at public hearings is absolutely fundamental and truly makes a difference when you're getting a direct audience with the decision makers and letting them know what's at stake. So I know there's another one. Our rental assistance application event is on Saturday. I think Dialencia dropped some information in the chat.
Oh yes, so Florida Rising, we've been helping people fill out the rental assistance application in partnership with Community Legal Services. We're having an event this Saturday in Orlando at 902 Lee Road, Suite 26. We'll put the address in the chat, and if you just want to follow up with us, there are more events. We will be back out with the County Commission June 7th when they do have that discussion again. And we need more people. We need the numbers.
Absolutely. We'll definitely look forward to staying in touch and wanted to host this panel that would really, of course, talk a little bit more and give a little context and offer some solutions that we see across the state for ways that we can make housing more affordable, and of course in the direction of really making it a right that people can count on, that people have a place that they can stay and call their own, and not have to worry about whether or not they're going to afford it in the next 4 months, or whether they're going to have to seriously consider moving to a different area, taking their child out of school. All these things that I think just don't get attention when people are talking about housing and prices in different areas. So definitely look forward to staying engaged. I know we have our Facebook groups here, and that's a great way to keep an eye out for events that are happening in your area, and of course different ways that you can get involved. So want to give a special thank you to all of our panelists who got to join us today. Thank you for shedding some light on this really important issue, and we look forward to organizing together.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Thanks, y'all.
Later, Gators.